Okay, well, got about 100 miles on the truck as I posted my last video there when I was driving down the coast on Easter Sunday, test driving the truck. Everything's real good, truck feels real good. However, there's a little bit of a valve train noise that was kind of bugging me, and so I decided to just go ahead and pull the valve cover off because otherwise I'm not going to be able to sleep basically. So I'm going to get in here, take a look around. For one thing, I wanted to just double check, make sure that my cam here, let's try to get the headlamp a little bit, just make sure my cam hadn't slipped or anything. From what I can see, it's still where I set it, so that's good. And just kind of look around, make sure everything looks good. When I was adjusting the timing, it sounded like there was a little rattling noise on the valve train kind of in this area, which was a little suspicious. So I want to give the valve train a once over, and the motor's still a little on the warm side, so I'm going to go ahead and roll things over and check the valve lash. Oh, and you might, if you're wondering what that is, I just wrapped a paper towel around the throttle cable because the plastic is deteriorating there, and I need to I forgot to wrap that with self-fusing tape. So I don't want any of the little bits and pieces falling into the motor. But as you can see, just quickly, everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and go through and I'll put the motor at top dead center, adjust the valves, and see what we can come up with here. Oh, and while we're on the subject of valves and timing and distributors and stuff, I wanted to show a little thing I have. I made this the other day. So what this is a Lisle Spark plug tester. I'll put the link in the video to where you can get these. I think they're 10 or 20 bucks off Amazon. Normally this comes with a little light in here, and it's designed to put into your ignition system and allow you to, if the little light inside of here is flashing, then you're getting spark, and that's all fine and dandy. I bought this originally for testing my chainsaws when I was converting one of my saws over to electronic ignition, and I wanted to have something where I could confirm that the magneto on the chainsaw was giving me spark to the ignition system. So this is real handy for that, but I ended up modifying it, and I kind of just wanted to show what I did here. So when setting the timing on the 22RE, I have a induction kind of timing light where you clamp on like a little clamp over the spark plug wire, but I found that to be kind of problematic, and in some cases it will give false readings. So I have an old timing light from 1980 or 1975 that is just a clip-on timing light, but it's a little awkward because you got to have somewhere to clip onto. So you see I've got it apart here, and so if you take a look, what I've done is on the 90-degree boot, I cut the boot with a razor blade very carefully, and then this is the piece that I cut off. And so the reason I did that is because now I can hook this on, clamp that on, and then connect this to the spark plug in the truck, and then connect that to the wire, and then set this up on top of the air intake tube. And this gives me a bare metal spot while the rest of the system is insulated. This gives me a bare metal spot to clip on my old-fashioned timing light and get a real good read. And then you can see I've replaced the original little light with just a coil spring in there. Now, this does negatively impact the ignition system due to the extra resistance and so forth. So the idle is a little off sometimes, but as far as setting the base timing and confirming that it jumps up to 10 to 13 degrees, this thing is real handy and prevents you from getting you know, shocked with the hooking up the timing light stuff. So I just wanted to show that. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description where you can get this. And this little, I think this little trick of cutting the insulator off is nice. And then of course you can always just slip it back in if you want to use it, you know, with the original light. And then these little caps just unscrew so you can get in there. So anyway, it's kind of handy for timing the 22 RE. Okay, we're getting on it. I got my, I don't know where this thing came from. This looks like, oh yeah, Home Depot. So this is one of those little pivoting ratchet deals, which come in handy occasionally. So a 19 millimeter met wrench and motor, as we know, when you're looking at it, turns clockwise. And checking the lobes here. So we're on the back side of the lobes there, so that means we're at top dead center. On a compression stroke, valves are closed, and you can see we've got our timing mark coming on up here. So, oops, a little too far there, but probably okay. I'll back it off a little bit. I thought I still had a little compression in this cylinder there. All right. Yeah, I think let me turn my headlamp on here. Yeah. So if you look down there with my time mark, right on the money. So everything's looking good. So I'm gonna run through, check the valves. No need for me to put that all on camera. Plenty of people have great videos about that. But 8 thousandths on the intake, 12 thousandths on the exhaust. So I'm going to run through and then just, you know, if you look in the manual or go on LCE Engineering, they have the little diagram. I forget which ones it is, but it's a couple of them here, a couple of them there, and then you spin the motor 360 degrees and then you do the rest of them. And you can verify your valve lash or set it. So, okay, well, you can see I've got my feeler gauge here and the shop manual showing adjusting the valve sequence. So I just first pass through. You can see where we're at on number 1 and 2 on the intake side. Number 1 is at 9.5 thousandths. Number 2 is at 8 thousandths, which is where it should be. Exhaust number 1 is at 12 thousandths, which is good. Exhaust number 3 is crept to 14 thousandths. Now, bear in mind that I did set the valves originally with the motor ice cold after a rebuild, as you saw in my other videos. So now, it's warm. I don't know what the temperature is, 100 degrees or 90 degrees or something. It's been a couple hours since I got home from test driving it. See my other video cruising down the coast, and then, you can kind of just figure out what time it is right now, like 8 o'clock or something. So, maybe like 2 hours, 3 hours the motor's been sitting. I'm gonna go ahead and get these number 1 and number 3 exhaust back in spec here, and then roll the motor over 360 degrees, and we'll pick up the rest here. Okay, well, we're back in business here. Let me tell you, there's nothing like trying to adjust the valves on your 22 RE and while your daughter is having an absolute meltdown because the internet at home is not working. Luckily, she figured out she's connected to the wrong Wi-Fi. So now that we have my daughter back on the internet and I'm done setting the valve lash on the motor when it's warm, we can see why I think I was getting some valve train noise. So the number 4 exhaust valve was almost at 16 thousandths. Excuse my terrible writing, but 0.155 is where the exhaust on number 4 was, when it should be at 12 thousandths. The number 3 exhaust valve was 14 thousandths, should be 12 thousandths. Number 2, 13 thousandths. Number 1 was okay. On the intake side, we didn't have any major carnage. Intake number 1 was darn near 10 thousandths. Put it back to 8 thousandths. 2 and 3 were good. 4 was off about 1 thousandths. Put it back at 8,000s. Now, when you have some of these valves off a couple thousandths, or in this case almost 4 thousandths, this one 2 thousandths, may not seem like a lot, but in terms of seat dwell time and lift and those kinds of things, it can have a fairly substantial impact. Generally speaking, when you're driving your truck or your car or whatever with the 22RE, if you're out a couple thousandths, or when you start to approach 4 thousandths, you can very subtly pick up misfiring, and that is sometimes a tip off that your valves are out of whack. Is if you feel like, oh, you know what, it just feels everything's cool, but it just kind of feels like maybe here and there's an extra pop or a crack, and you think, is that a misfire? And if you are cruising along in your truck or whatever, and you kind of feel like, oh, I feel like every so often there's like a little extra misfire in there, chances are pretty good that at least one of your valves has crept out of where it should be. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and check the torque on the head bolts, and then button this guy back up, and we'll put another 100 miles or so on the truck and see how things go. But I am glad that I went ahead and pulled the valve cover off and found the valves there. So everybody's back in spec now. All right, we've got the old snap-on 1/2-inch torque wrench out from its case, and I've got it dialed up to 75 foot-pounds. This is one of my beloved torque wrenches here from Snap-on. This thing's, I think, new. It cost $500. I don't even like to breathe on this if I can avoid it. I like to just have it safely stowed away in its little case. But we do need to check the head bolt or the head stud torque on these ARP nuts. So I'm going to run through them real quick, 75 foot-pounds, see if we get clicking in all the right places, and then I'll get this guy safely back in his case where he belongs. Okay, my torque wrench is happily stowed away where it belongs, set back to 0 foot-pounds, and I'm happy to report that all the head bolts were pretty much right on the money. A couple of them just, slight movement, but nothing significant. So everybody effectively 75 foot-pounds. So that's real good news. So I think we're good to go here. So we got the valves back in spec. Head bolts after 100 miles are still nice and tight. Everything looks good, as far as the cam. You know what, I will check make sure these nuts are tight here. But the cam has not moved. Motor's running beautifully. So I'm gonna go ahead and button everything up here, and we'll see if we can get another couple 100 miles on the truck. And the next big hurdle, I guess after 500 or 1,000 miles, and I'll probably run down south and then back, which is a kind of a grueling, arduous trip for the truck. Lots of hills and towing, not towing, but I put 600 pounds in the bed sort of thing, and then climb these ungodly mountains. And so that's really gives a good indication of how things are working. And then once I get back from doing one of those runs, which is darn near 1,000 miles of up and down hills and so forth, pushing the truck hour after hour at 85, 90 miles an hour. Once I do one of those runs, probably check the valves again, and then I'll do a compression test across all 4 cylinders and a leak down test. So that'll be coming maybe a month or so down the road. But for now, everything's looking pretty good. Okay. Beat goes on to the break of dawn, as they say. Motor's back together. Valves are adjusted. I'll tell you what, the guy who came up with the hydraulic self-adjusting lifters, he must have been like, Joe, hey, I got this idea. Never adjust your valves again. What are you talking about? We're going to be rich. Unfortunately, the 22RE has got the non-adjustable valves, or the non-hydraulic valves, which means I have to adjust them every few thousand miles, I guess, for the rest of my life. But nothing causes me to have a more restless night than thinking my valves are not in adjustment, I'll tell you that. So everything's back together. I think we got all the hoses and everything together. I fixed up that little throttle cable I was mentioning there that was falling apart with some 3M self-vulcanizing tape. And let me tell you, if you have never used 3M self-vulcanizing tape, it will change your life. Definitely. I'll see where I got mine from, probably Amazon. I'll put a link in the description, but it's basically, it's not electrical tape, it's rubber that fuses to itself. So you can wrap it around wires and stuff without having to get to the end of things. And as long as you kind of give it a little pull and lay it down over itself, something about that stretching and grabbing back onto itself, it more or less just turns into a rubber sheathing. Like I say, that stuff will change your life. And then when you're all, when it's all said and done, the outside is barely sticky. A little sticky, but it kind of goes away after a while. But for just doing a quick kind of wrap job on a cable like that or stuff. I use it in some of the electrical connections. Like I said, I redid my wiring harness. Normally I solder the connections and heat shrink them and things, but in some cases there's just areas where that's not practical. For example, if you go back a couple of my videos back, let me turn my headlamp on here, and you see, I use self-vulcanizing tape in that section in one of the previous videos where I had to wrap the harness together. And, what are you going to do in a situation like that? You can't really, there's no heat shrink, to speak of, and you've got connections going out like, an octopus in different directions. So you got to do the self-vulcanizing tape routine. It's head and shoulders above electrical tape. So I remember the first time I got some self-vulcanizing tape and used it, I literally went and just took all the black electrical tape I had in my electrical, toolbox. I literally just threw it away in the trash. I was like, oh my God, it's self-vulcanizing tape. So something to check out if you've never used it. Really, really great product. Just make sure you get the 3M version and not some sort of knockoff. Like I say, I'll put the link in the description. Okay, so I think we're good to go. As mentioned, set the valve lash warm, 8,000 on the intake, 12,000 on the exhaust. Check the head bolts; those are good. Check the torque on the ARP self-locking little nuts for the cam. LCE Engineering adjustable cam gear, and it was still in spec. I think I mentioned I set the distributor to 7 degrees before top dead center, and I think that's about it. I dialed back the crankcase vacuum because I was pulling 12. I pulled 12 milliliters of oil in 60 miles, which is a little above what I want to see. So I think I had too much crankcase vacuum going in and it was sucking too much oil out. So I dialed it back a little bit, and now, it's a little difficult to give you an exact reading because we have a fresh air breather involved, but a couple inches, pulling a couple inches of vacuum, and then when you let air come in through the breather, then it reads on the scale as half an inch roughly, maybe just 3/8 or 7/16 of an inch. Excuse me, 3/8, 5/16 of an inch of mercury. So, you know, I'll put another 100 miles on the truck, see how things are running, but I suspect it should be really nice. And I will say that the idle is very smooth, so that's also another thing I was real happy about. Anyways, that wraps up this little video. Just kind of, you know, the initial checkup on the motor after 100 miles. Everything seems right on the money. So I think we're good for the next 250 miles, and then I'll see what kind of gas mileage we're getting, and we'll go from there. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching the video. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to use the section below. Like I say, I always try to answer all those questions that come in. And if you consider subscribing to the channel, of course, that helps out a lot. We're over 5,000 members, subscribers on the channel, which is really awesome. Heading towards 6,000. And as long as you guys keep liking the videos and commenting and watching everything on the channel, I'll keep posting up the videos on the old 22RE. Okay, thanks for watching.